brief overview of the project's environmental context and the impetus for doing this work. Then go over the goals and complexities of the project itself before touching on the next steps for implementation. Throughout the presentation, please feel free to use the Q&A function to type any questions you may have as they arise. We'll address them at the end during our Q&A portion of the evening, and we'll also provide a link to our online comment form for everyone to share any additional feedback they may have at the end. Before we dive into the particulars of the project, it's important to note that forests are a reflection of both their land use history and their ecological parameters. These two elements dictate the structure and composition of a given forest ecosystem. So in this region, human actions, particularly historic clear-cut logging and fire suppression, have created highly impaired, unhealthy forests out of alignment with natural ecological processes. Pre-European colonization, these forest ecosystems were actively managed by indigenous communities and experienced frequent low-intensity fires that cleared out brush and excess fuels, contributed to nutrient cycling in the soil, and created a biodiverse, dynamic mosaic landscape comprised of trees of varying sizes and structures with ample space between them. By clear-cutting and then removing fire from these landscapes, we have fundamentally disrupted these natural conditions and profoundly altered the state of these forests. As a result, we now see forests that are more homogeneous, both in terms of species composition and structure. On the left here, you can see a typical old-growth forest ecosystem with its characteristically large trees, a multi-layered canopy with openings and smaller trees, and a flourishing understory that all provides critical habitat for wildlife. In contrast, on the right, you can see a regrowth forest that has developed following a clear cut in the absence of healthy fire. It has an unnaturally high density of thin trees that are not able to get light and grow wide or as tall as they can due to light and nutrient limitations, and high competition between them. There's very little light reaching the forest floor and a low diversity of forest floor plants, and there are very high fuel loads. Diversity in species composition and forest structure is the bedrock of forest health and resilience. And these homogeneous conditions not only provide lower quality habitat for wildlife, but they greatly increase the forest's vulnerability to a range of stressors, including pest and pathogen outbreaks and high-intensity catastrophic fires, and are far less resilient in recovering from such disturbances. With climate change, threats to these already vulnerable forest ecosystems are accelerating and compounding. As average temperatures increase, the conditions for more extreme wildfires like we experienced during the CZU fire pictured here increase as well. Stand replacing disturbances like this have significant carbon implications as they can turn our forests, which are carbon sinks, meaning they store carbon, into carbon sources, as forest fires emit all of that stored carbon into the atmosphere. So what can we do about this? Restoration forestry offers a path forward. In contrast to industrial-style logging, where the goal is primarily resource extraction, restoration forestry is a science-based approach that works with the forest and improves the way it functions. By selectively and strategically altering the structural and/or compositional attributes of the forest, for instance, by primarily thinning smaller diameter trees in a given stand to allocate more growing space to the larger trees, and mimicking natural patterns of forest development, restoration forestry treatments help establish or redirect the trajectory of the forest toward an ecologically healthier, more resilient state, one that can better withstand disturbances such as wildland fire events, pests, pathogens, droughts, or extreme heat, and recover more quickly from such disturbances. With restoration forestry, the goal is for the forest's own growth dynamics to return the stand over time to the desired condition. While in some cases, forest stands may eventually achieve desired conditions without intervention, active management can realign stand development trends with restoration objectives more quickly while helping to protect older, more established trees. In this graphic, you can see how a resilient forest responds to a fire. With minimal brush and ample space between trees, fires stay low to the ground and mature trees remain. While there is a small dip in carbon storage when the fire occurs, the forest recovers quickly and carbon storage increases over time. In contrast, in an overly dense forest with heavy brush and crowded trees, ladder fuels carry the fire into the canopy, causing fires of a greater scope and scale, resulting in widespread mortality and a fundamental state change to the ecosystem, with a significant loss of carbon storage as it is emitted into the atmosphere. It's important to note that even with active management, wildland-fire events will continue to occur, especially with climate change. However, proactive, strategic interventions can help create forest conditions that are far more resilient and adaptable to fire in alignment with historic fire regimes. These principles inform Midpen's forest management goals and policies, which in turn guide our land stewardship. Per our resource management policies, we are tasked with managing forest ecosystems to promote biologically diverse, dynamic forest conditions, enhance high-quality habitat and late sterile forest conditions, and help protect ecological health and resilience. This encompasses inventorying and monitoring our forests and implementing forest management projects like the one we're here to discuss this evening. And Midpen is not alone in doing this work. Indeed, we are building on decades of research and forest management projects implemented by our partners and peers across the region, including those listed here, amongst many others. So with that framing, let's dive into the La Honda Forest Health Project, which aims to improve the health and resilience of approximately 121 acres of forest in northern La Honda Open Space Preserve. These areas are highly impaired as a result of previous land use, including intensive logging and fire suppression, which has left them out of alignment with the ecological conditions we'd like to see in a healthy, resilient forest. Even though the project area constitutes less than 2% of the preserve in its entirety, we have a significant opportunity here to make a sizable improvement by protecting and accelerating the development of old-growth forests, improving watershed conditions, and implementing long-term adaptive management to learn about how forests respond to restoration and climate change in alignment with our forest management policies and mission as an organization. Ultimately, our goal is to help stands that look like this, with overly dense, thin trees, highly susceptible to a range of stressors and lacking biodiversity, to stands that look more like this, with trees of varying sizes, ages, and species, lots of structural complexity, high-quality habitat, a flourishing understory, and stable, long-term carbon storage. To avoid a situation like this, where there is a massive loss of stored carbon and biodiversity and a fundamental state change to the forest itself, which would take many, many years to recover. There has been a lot of work to get us here, and there's more to come. This project started with the preparation of a forest assessment back in 2020, which included a comprehensive inventory of all of the forested areas across the preserve. From there, our consultants, Dan Sicular and Joe McGuire, who are here tonight, developed a suite of management options and recommendations described in the La Honda Forest Health Assessment and Management Plan, which was approved by Midpen's Board of Directors in 2021. The board received a project update in 2022 and approved the project direction, directing staff to develop a timber harvesting plan, or THP, as the permitting vehicle to implement the project, which brings us to the present day. We are currently developing this plan, sharing the project with the public, and coordinating with regulatory agencies in preparation for eventual submittal of the THP to CAL FIRE for their review. The THP is the equivalent of a CEQA Environmental Impact Report, or EIR, with CAL FIRE as the lead agency. The THP offers the most streamlined, cost-effective, and efficient means of meeting the project's forest health and watershed improvement goals, while simultaneously upholding rigorous environmental, public, and agency review standards. THPs are prepared by registered professional foresters, are pursuant to California's forest practice rules, and undergo interdisciplinary environmental review and inspection from local, state, and federal agencies to ensure regulatory compliance. The THP process typically spans 2 years from plan development, public review, and CAL FIRE review and approval. Once reviewed, THPs are valid for 3 years with the option to renew once for an additional 2-year period. While La Honda Preserve encompasses over 6,000 acres of open space, the project areas covered in the THP span 121 acres of forest divided into 2 units, the 50-acre Harmon parcel and the 71-acre Conservation Management Unit, or CMU. These 2 units exhibit slightly divergent land management histories, which have resulted in contrasting conditions in the present day. As such, the forest management pathways for each unit will be tailored to the site conditions in order to meet the overall forest health objectives. Like much of the Santa Cruz Mountain region, the Harmon parcel was clear-cut in the late 19th, early 20th century, but it was subsequently managed through uneven-aged single-tree selection silviculture into the late 1980s, creating forest conditions today that are on their way to old growth. But since it hasn't been actively managed since that last harvest over 30 years ago, the stem density is still undesirably high. By thinning some of the smaller trees around the largest, most vigorous trees deemed old growth candidates, we can help facilitate the development of the old growth forest conditions we'd like to see on a more accelerated timeline than if we were to leave the stand dynamics to their own devices. Similarly, the CMU was iteratively clear-cut throughout the 19th and 20th centuries, but it has not been actively managed since the 1960s. As a result, the unit is comprised of dense, thin regrowth with high levels of surface and ladder fuels exhibiting low wildfire resiliency. It's also marked by a network of legacy logging roads that are contributing to erosion and sedimentation throughout the watershed. As with the Harmon parcel, we'll implement a low thinning, that is, removing smaller diameter trees to shift the growth of the larger trees and increase spacing, but on a heavier scale, and address the road network issues that are impacting the watershed. This project is not without its complexities. Fortunately, one of the benefits of doing a PHP is that it offers the permitting to address road issues in addition to implementing forest health treatments. We've completed a supplemental roads assessment, which includes recommendations such as eliminating, modifying, and/or replacing roads, as well as addressing stream crossings and gullies where appropriate to reduce sedimentation and improve watershed conditions as part of the THP preparation process. We have a little more work to do to determine our exact plan for the roads, but identifying the issues and determining pathways to address them has been a critical step towards improving watershed conditions. In addition to the roads, marbled murrelet introduced some complexity to the project, as the Harmon parcel has been deemed suitable habitat for this endangered species. And there is also suitable habitat throughout the region, including a nearby El Corte de Madera open space preserve. We've completed a habitat assessment and surveys and have not detected any marbled murrelet within the project area to date, but we're working with the California Department of Fish and Wildlife to confirm the appropriate measures to implement throughout project operations to minimize any adverse impacts to this protected species. Ultimately, in implementing this project and accelerating old growth forest conditions, our goal is to create high quality habitat for marbled murrelet to hopefully occupy in the future. But before we can get there, we have a few steps to take. This includes finalizing our plans for the road network and receiving concurrence from the California Department of Fish and Wildlife regarding marbled murrelet protections. Once we have those aspects in place, we can finish drafting the THP, present it to Midpen's Planning and Natural Resources Committee, and then the full Board of Directors, and then submit it to CAL FIRE for their review, ideally sometime in 2026. There will be several opportunities for public comment throughout this process beyond this evening, including at the public meetings started here, as well as during the THP public review process. Pending review and acceptance of the THP, project operations will commence tentatively slated for 2027. This will entail upgrading roads where appropriate to the standards necessary for forest operations, marking, harvesting, and selling timber, and then implementing post-harvest restoration work, which will include treating invasive species. During operations, folks in the region may experience temporary road and trail closures adjacent to the project areas and see logging trucks hauling logs. One of the topic areas we anticipate the most questions about pertains to the timber sales. We want to be clear that any revenue generated from the harvesting of trees will be used in the restoration effort per our forest management policies. Midpen is not cutting and selling trees to make a profit. This is purely a restoration project, and we will not be harvesting all of the merchantable timber from the forest. We are only cutting and removing trees that will benefit the health and resilience of the ecosystem, and all of the funds generated from the harvest will be used to offset the costs of the restoration effort itself. So with that, we'll shift to the Q&A portion of the evening. Please feel free to type your questions into the Q&A if you've not done so already. Cody will be reading them out loud and directing them to Midpen staff and our consultant team to answer. And if we don't get to your questions this evening, or if you have further thoughts you'd like to share with us, we encourage you to submit them via the comment form on our website, openspace.org/forest.
Thank you, Ari. Just letting you know that we currently do not have any questions in our Q&A.
Okay.
We did get a comment, not a question, just saying thank you. Is very informative, and they appreciate the webinar. And another comment regarding that they appreciate the advancing a more resilient forest in the region.
Great.
So we'll give it another minute or so, but if you wanted to share the comment form again at the website.
Yep, it's here on our screen, openspace.org/forest, for anybody who'd like to share additional thoughts or comments.
Well, it appears that it's going to be an early night for everyone. And just as a reminder, like Ari said, this is not your only time to have any questions or provide comments. There are plenty of opportunities coming up as we work our way through the process of this project. And with that, Ari, would you like to do a little closing?
Sure, I can. I do believe we said that folks can drop by at any time during the hours that we set until 7:30. So I do want to just be mindful of that in case people want to join later. But if the people who are here don't have any further questions, they're welcome to drop off.
Ari, we did have a question if this presentation will be made available online for people who missed tonight's meeting.
Yes, I think we can go ahead and do that. And since I don't think we have any additional attendees, we can just go ahead and end the webinar, and then we'll provide the recording online for folks who missed it.